What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. All right, so we got the patch notes for the PTS for Blackwood 7.0.2 from Gina Bruno. Thank you, Gina. You always do great work. We appreciate it. We really do. She's such a... her and Jessica are great. You know, I'm going to say it. The devs are great, too. Just sometimes we get aggravated. But that's what we're going to talk about. Not resolving some of the major problems. So let's go over this really quick here. Table of content, new feature updates, big changes, pan elsewhere celebration. It's going to be cool. Companion performance. I'm glad they're really on this. That's good shit. Known issues, template updates, fixed improvements, combat gameplay, blah blah blah, itemization sets, base game. Okay, I'm going to skip everything for the most part. You know, they're doing a really good job with, you know, isolating bugs, working on the companion system. They're doing really great animation, really good shit. Combat system for the companions, really good. Some UI interface changes, you know, especially with the cooldown system and everything that's being implemented. Dungeon fixes. You know, great. Trial fixes, especially with the new trial. I went over all this before the stream. So, okay. And then they're also addressing Reliqueen scaling and stuff like that. So, it's going to be interesting because a lot of people are going to have a shit fit. The arms of Reliqueen. The damage over time effects listed below will now continuously update their damage based on your stat each tick. That's very important. Your stats. It is stat based now. All procs are. Rather than following the standard of snapshotting their stats on applications. Okay. This should fix a few issues where they were not inherent traits, such as bloodthirsty or other changes in stats like flawless dawnbreaker. Okay. So they're fixing these scaling issues. But if Reliqueen isn't up to par, that could definitely, you know, it's definitely taken a hit since the scaling issue. Which, it's whatever. That's what we do. We adapt, we change. Fix an issue causing your character experience desynchronization death states, causing, well, glad they fixed that. There's still a bunch of issues. Necromancer, Warhorn changes to sturdy. Okay. I think they're doing this intentionally so you can run this and you'll get a resistance buff and you can run the new set. I mean, it's not a bad idea. Because who wants, you know, I don't know. I kind of see where they're going to promote the set. Say, okay, hey, wait a minute. Well, it's not. That's critical resistance. So you know, it's still PvP based. I actually would have changed this to put just resistance. You know, just it would promote the new set. So my bad. But the critical resistance PvP, whatever, large group scale, you know, PvP. Most of the trolls and whatever don't even give a fuck about that. But whatever. Moving on. Made the following stat adjustments. Sets that use weapon and spell damage now require 6,574 of either in order to reach their original goals, up from 5,478, resulting in approximately a 17% reduction. Now, this is a start. It is. And that's what I'm saying. It is a start for the scaling system, and it is. Let me get through it, and we'll address some of the issues. But it is a start because what we talked about. You're right. I've said for weeks now that the scaling system in the game is a detriment, and when you add, the procs evaluations based on scaling, right? Take a player like me, for example. I can scale weapon damage to 9k. I'd like to see the meta players try without using my configuration because they're not going to be able to. Sucking fakes. Anyways, I could scale up to 9,000 weapon damage. But I'm not going to utilize that proc set to achieve it. So that brings the issue of proc, the proc sets aren't going to be as effective when it comes to what? Stat adjustments. All right? So people are now going to bail on some proc sets for what? Valued stats. And I've always preached that. I'm like, proc sets are good, but they don't crit. We have a GCD, we have all these other factors, but when we take a look at the scaling system, now what we're going to find ZOS do is coming out with new monster sets that people aren't really going to be caring about the proc effect as much, depending on the effect, more than what? The associated stat, right? We're going to call this, I'm not a meta person. I don't like, going in along with the meta. But we're going to call this the stat meta more than what? The proc meta. So they're accomplishing a assist, what they're setting out to do by reevaluating this, but it's also going to kick themselves in the teeth because why? They're not adjusting the sets, more or less adjusting, putting a band-aid over the problem, and they're doing it because some of these proc sets were scaling crazy based on the lower value, especially in stamina versus mag. Because now here we got the problem. People are going to be like, well, Mystic, you said you can hit 9 on a stamina tune. But like Sane said earlier, a mag tune, it has a harder time to reach this due to what? Their passives, their light armor passives versus medium armor passives. And that becomes problematic when promoting what? Monster sets. So statting now is going to become more prominent. Why? Because statting goes across the board on all abilities versus what? Requiring and depending on proc effects. Now, I could probably get up to about a 6.5, but once again, that isn't going as with a spell, but that is with Kina not utilizing what? A proc effect on monster set. That's my point. That's my point right there. So, I'll have to test it, but pretty much. Now, I mean, in certain scenarios, when you have other buffs applied, you may accomplish that in a trial scenario, but on the average, absolutely no way. No way. But I do give it up to them because had they kept this initial value, stamina would have been running out of control. But mag's still going to suffer because they lumped them up in the same total amount when both can't achieve the same value. Okay. They'd have to adjust the armor sets in proportion to be able to accommodate that. Sets that uses health, sets that use magic or stamina now require 39,000. Once again, mag, that's where it's easy to hit. Stam, not so much. And of either in order to reach the original values up from 38, resulting in approximately 4% reduction. Now, what I would like to see is a proportion between the two values, and I need to test this on public test this week to see if that can accommodate, right? But based on the wording here, sets that use, we're going to see once again now the stam sets fall short where the mag sets become more prominent based on what? Their initial stat indication. Okay. Sets that use health now require 43. I like this. I think this was good. For tank builds. Sets that use physical or spell resistance now require 30. Of up from 27. Once again, I think this was appropriate. I think the last two values are appropriate, but these two setups aren't ideal based on what? Passives. And, that's just, they're putting it at a flat value, which both sides can't necessarily achieve. in an ideal situation, on an average situation. So I guess as far as the DPS reduction, they're getting their way on that. I mean, whatever. Fix an issue when mixing perfected and non-perfected items. Okay, whatever. All right. Crimson, Monster Masks. Reduce the damage of Scourge Harvester. Increase the damage dealt by this set by 22%. As if it wasn't a pain in the ass to begin with. Okay. Moving on. Now here's the thing. Gaze of Sithis. Big one here. Reduce the max health granted from the set to 3,276. Now the real Godzilla covered this, and he pointed out these values between these two. And I actually thought Godzilla has been point on lately, more now in the last, with this update, with this last these patch notes, these testing, dude is just steamrolling. So I do give it up to the real Godzilla. He's been putting in so much work, and he actually called values like this that, if you don't drop these values down to these levels, it's problematic. Everybody said that, but Godzilla has pointed out specifically these values. So heads up. Reduce the armor granted to 4,000 down from 10,076. Once again, very whatever, but here's the kicker. Increase the health recovery to 10,025, up from 500. Now, here's where I'm going to bitch, because you can scale health recovery so much that you don't even need a heal. You basically are inherently grabbing your own self-sustaining heal for 3,000 to 4,000 per second. Crazy for feeling so lonely. Okay, moving on. Okay, Harpoon's waiting. They have spoilers. We won't go over it. Increase the critical strike chance per stack up to 125 from 119. Okay. Reduce the critical damage done 1 to 2. I'm cool with this. This set now causes you to lose 5 stacks upon taking damage rather than 1. But it now also has a 1-second cooldown to help prevent losing all of your stacks in player versus player situations where getting hit by multiple attacks at once. My only concern is for the people who are all hyped, is this factor. That last factor. I would have taken that down to about 3 and then kept the effect. Because for PvEers that were looking forward to it, this might be a make or break. I don't know, to be honest. I liked all the other change modifiers to it, but I think 5 maybe bit off a little bit more for a PvE scenario. Just saying. All right, PvP sourced, trials, everything else. But I really wanted to go over this and, whatever. So they raised the cap, correct? More gimmicks, right. And that's what I'm saying, man. Means price for the crafty Alfiq and hulking groggers will skyrocket. Right, it'll definitely go back. Back to work I go. Take care, Harold. Thanks for stopping in. The biggest thing about this is it is a start. It is. They're realizing, we've got to address these issues. The players are finding it, but here becomes my question: why are the players having to find it initially to begin with? Why? Because had the players not spoken up and this went live, you'd have a bigger problem. You need to be on it. You need to know what the fuck you're implementing, because every time you implement shit, you're nerfing the fuck out of it later down the road because you're not taking into consideration the long-term effects. And what's that do? It causes unnecessary work and heartache on the community just because they've either become so dependent on what you've implemented, or it's become so toxic that it's actually turned your community against you. My advice: don't make these mistakes when introducing sets. Try to get them as close as possible, knowing when you implement them what the long-term effect it is going to have on your community and on your product. Players shouldn't have, I mean, I get testers are testing, but you need to know, you need to realize you guys have been doing this for years, Zoss, for years. And that's one of the fundamentals that we're trying to get down to. You pulling back on some of these things. One second, guys. Okay, but anyways, so there's a lot of things that they've done that they're doing right, but it doesn't fix the problem. It's not addressing the real issue here, right? I'm going to check it out. I'm going to take a look at the PTS, and we'll take a look at like cross scaling, especially when it comes to certain set items, not just monster procs, but when we have to take a look at other configurations when it comes to whatever. For PvP, it is a solution, potential solution. But once again, I reintegrate the difference between mag to stam. Right? That's where we're lying at. You're lumping them in the same pool when their inherent passives are so, polar opposite. You're going to have one more dominant than the other based on scaling factor. Right now, I hate to burst people's bubbles who haven't done the testing, but from my calculations, Stam will be pulling ahead this update in PvE scenario based on the need not to have their pen value at ideal scenarios where mag is overpenned. Because I've talked about forced damage, right? We just need a moderate amount of our penetrating value, because anything else that applies, we scale above based on the scaling factor. So by all definition, based on the allocation of where the devs went with the scaling of said monster sets or said procs, Stam will pull ahead of mag if they do it right. Meaning you take a minimal of a 3008, 3009, you don't need to go over 4. And if a tank or anybody was to apply debuff effects to just the marginal, meaning major, minor, maybe tremor scale, maybe, infuse crushers with pack, just off the top of my head. You don't need to run Alkosh because, whatever. But I'm just going there. The scaling factor between the Stam will skyrocket past the mags because they don't need 8,000 penetrating value. Where mag is pulling 5, 6, 7,000 penetrating value, and their cap doesn't go higher. Where Stams does scale even more so than the mag. But you'll have content creators out there, Nesfax, who's like, Stam's going to be weak again this update. I beg to differ. You're going to see the shift. Why? Because of the scale factor. Do your math. All right, guys, I'm out. Once again, Mr. Craven, Mystics MMOs. Peace.